All right, I'm thinking today what I'd like to do is probably use this piece of wood. It's a piece of basswood that I had laying around. I started carving a face on it. Yeah, I didn't like the way the face turned out, so it's been slowly getting eaten up as fishing lures. And I think what I'm going to do is probably make just a standard crankbait with it. Nothing too fancy. I think just for the sake of making our first video, we'll keep it simple. And we'll kind of walk you through step by step what I do. I may not narrate the entire thing, but we'll see how it goes. All right. Well, I'll see you back here down on the bench. All right. We're going to start our project here. I always like to kind of draw out what I'm going to make here. And I think what we're going to do is just start by dissecting this so that we know how much wood we have to work with. You can see that. Got a line going right down the middle. And we have to make some decisions about how long we want the crankbait and how fat we want the crankbait. Now, I think for the purposes of this one, we're going to go a bit skinnier than this. This is about 3/4 of an inch, maybe. Yeah, about 3/4 of an inch. We're probably going to go a bit thinner than that, but we'll do that when we're carving. And for now, I think we're just going to draw the profile on. We want to make a decision about how long our crankbait's going to be. And I think we're going to go about, yeah, probably about that long. I don't know how long that really is, but seems about right. If we were going to catch northern, man, it'd be a really big walleye if we were going to go for walleye. I think we're going to shorten it up a bit so we can go with kind of an all-purpose sort of thing. Probably about 3 to 3.5 inches. I'm thinking somewhere about there. So this will be our bait, and that'll be waste. And I think we're going to go for kind of a traditional profile here. Something a little bit like this. Don't want too big of a belly on it. Yeah, we're going to shorten that head up a little bit. Yeah, so even that's a little big. I think we're going to go a little thinner through the head area, down to the tail. Kind of a shallow, more shallow belly on it. Kind of like that, maybe. No, I think we're gonna go up quicker and then down faster. Something a little bit more like that. Maybe streamline it a little bit more. Something kind of like that, I think. Kind of like that shape. See how we'll go around a regular crankbait I made before. I kind of like the shape, but it's not exactly what we're going for. I think we're going to go for something a little more traditional oblong shape, maybe a little bit less of this tail and belly area. Yeah, I think that'll work. I think this will be a nice shape. I think it's a pretty decent size too for like walleye fishing, and you might get a northern or something on that yet too. We'll see. We'll see. Well, you got to go fish them, see what happens. All right. Well, I'll put you up on the bench here so you can see the saw, and we'll cut the shape out and go from there. right, then we got our fish shape kind of cut out. Really rough at this point. And what I like to kind of do is go and I'll mark the bottom. So now I gotta make some decisions about taper and tail and everything. And I found that what you kind of want to do is where the head is, you want this to be a little bit fatter, like so. And then the tail, the taper goes longer. Just kind of what I've seen with fish in general. So that'll be our basic from the top down profile. And we'll cut that out on the coping saw too. Incredibly rough. But we'll do our best to clean that up with the knife in the next part. Okay, I'm up here on the bench again, and I'm going to kind of take these sharper edges, these rough edges, and I'm just going to start knocking them off with a knife and going for a round shape. This is going to be a kind of a funny looking bait, I think, but yeah, we'll just get started on this process. You always want to be careful with the carving knife. Try not to cut yourself. It's inevitable you will at some point. But try your best. You always want to try to practice, I guess what you might call safe carving practices. Basswood carves really nice. And that's nice wood for doing all this handwork. It goes pretty quick. And we're starting to knock those edges off. Starting to take a little shape. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to keep working on this, and then I'll rejoin you when I kind of get things how I want. All right, welcome back. I think we're going to get to sanding on this now. I got all of the sort of sharp edges knocked off of it with the knife. And we're going to just start with the sandpaper. Now what I like to do with these is I like to hold the sandpaper kind of in my hand, cradling it. And I use the sort of concavity of my hand here to keep the bait round. So I just sort of move it on my palm. Like so. Keep rotating it so we don't end up with a bunch of flat spots. And you can start to see pretty quickly. Get that to focus. Get that to focus there. Start to see pretty quickly that it doesn't take much to knock off all the little facets from the carving process. So I think I'll get you set up over to the side here, and we'll sand this smooth, and you can, I guess you can watch it. Have fun with that. So there you see, we have a pretty good smooth bait blank. Most of those facets are knocked off of there. I still have finished sanding to do, but you don't want to go all the way to your finished bait size and smoothness with that's 220 sandpaper, because I'm going to use 400 grit now and get it pretty close. But I think what we'll do first, mark out where we want our eyes and lips and all that sort of stuff, and we'll go from there. Alrighty. Okay, I got you facing this way again. I think what we're going to do is probably mark out where I want the eyes. And I think for eyes we're going to use these fish skull living eyes or fire eyes, 6mm sized, and that's I think about 1/4 of an inch for our imperial friends, you know. Excuse me. So to do this, I'm just going to kind of see where I maybe want the eye. You kind of see somewhere around there probably. You got to think about where our lip is going to go too, and where the eye might land nicely. I'm thinking we put the eye right in that area, and then our lip can go down here. I think we're going to go something like that. Probably do a fairly deep, steep dive on it, so the lip is going to be facing. So if we think about the bait has a line that runs right down the center of it, that's the center line of our bait, no pun intended. The closer to parallel with the center line that your lip is, the deeper the bait dives. The more perpendicular it is, the more it wiggles around and rolls. Since we want this to dive pretty deep, I think we're going to go with a lip angle about like that, and that would be really deep. Maybe we'll go a little less. Maybe we'll go a little more shallow on that lip angle. Yeah, think something more like that. I should perhaps explain a little bit that you want to be very careful when fitting these lips. And I use Lexan. Because it is so tough. It's such a tough material. And I kind of have a formula when I draw out my lips, excuse me, of how thick I want them to be. I use a coping saw and I go inside the lines. But it's sort of guesswork at this point. You want the Lexan to fit tight. And if you don't get it tight, it can be adjusted after the fact, but it's much easier to just get it close right away. At least I found it is. Your results may vary. The best thing to do, get it close, and if you got to clean it up with a file or a piece of sandpaper or even a carving knife. So here we're just going to try fitting our Lexan. It's a little tight. It does have the protective barrier on it. I'll just peel that back a little bit here and we'll get a better, more accurate reading here. Okay, that's way too tight. So we can take care of that. We will adjust that a little bit. And I usually use a carving knife for that. And just hand adjust it until it's perfect. So I will show you that once I get that process done. Okay, so I got that lip adjusted here, and I think we're about ready to trace out our lip design. See, I got that stuck on there all the way down in, and then I can figure out exactly what shape lip I want. I think we're going to start by just getting sort of basic shape. Kind of traced out in our limits here how long we want the lip to be. I think that looks pretty good. I don't think you can see that on the camera, but I can see it here in real life. Make sure we got everything straight. Just kind of freehand this lip shape in, and then I usually cut them out with a coping saw because Lexan does not shatter like acrylic panels. And then I tweak the final shape with a belt sander and then hand sanding. So yeah, I don't think you can quite see that on the, yeah, there you go. So that's going to be basically our lip shape. And we'll do a bunch of hand fitting and sanding and stuff afterwards. Okie dokie. All right, we got the lip slot cut out. The lip is more or less finished. I'll show you that. There's some handwork to do on this. But I'll get to that in a moment here. Right now I'm going to drill the eye holes, or the eye slots. And we'll probably go ahead and drill out the hook holes and the hole for the, whatchamacallit, the line lead. There we go. So we're going to just have a quarter-inch Forstner bit, and that'll fit the eyes really nicely. So I'll make the pockets for the eyes. I like to use this piece of foam because then I can control things a little better. Clean that Forstner bit a little bit. There we go. There's one eye pocket made. I'll go see if I can get that to focus. There we go. One eye pocket made. I'll do the other one. And I like to do this before I do my kind of final sanding, if you will, because then if there's any burrs or rough spots, I can take them off with the sandpaper. And it's just one step instead of a bunch. There's the other eye pocket. Pretty good. That'll work. I think I'm going to move on to doing the line hole for the line here, and then one for a hook back here and one for a hook back there. I think I'm going to go 2 hooks on this, 2 treble hooks. Mostly because it's not a giant bait and there really isn't a lot of room for more than 2 hooks on it. And I think that'll be plenty. I have a 1/16 inch drill bit. Come on, focus in. 1/16 inch drill bit, and that'll work for all my holes because I use kind of a spun wire technique. I'm just going to eyeball where I want the hooks to be. I think grab a pencil here. I think what we're going to do is put one of the hooks, because I want the weight to go about right there. I think I'm going to put one of the hooks sort of back here and another one right on the tail. I think that'll work nicely. Right on the back. It's pretty strong. This is pretty strong wood, and honestly, anything that's going to eat a fish or lure this size probably won't be too big. So I kind of like them right behind the belly. When most fish come up from the bottom, they'll grab from that area from the back or right underneath here, kind of right from the side, and right to be in the middle. Okay, and then I think for this one we're not going to put the eye in the lip. I think we're going to put it right here on the nose, because that moves our swivel point sort of forward about a quarter of the way out onto the lip. That should give us pretty good action. I think we're going to kind of go in at sort of this angle so it runs up parallel to the lip. So get these holes drilled. There's really no good way to do this because this is such a 3D object. Best way to do it is just turn down the speed on your drill and go slow. A little off center, but that should be okay. Let's see. Hole. I'm going to do this one. I think I'm going to go in at just a very slight angle. I know this is maybe not the best way to do it. I'm sure using a drill press would be better. Number one, I don't have a drill press, and then number two, I say with it being a 3D object, very difficult to use a drill press. could be very difficult to use a drill press. There you go, there's that when it's in the end. So the key I found is just to go slow and be patient. Excuse me. So there you go. You can see we have our holes drilled, eye hole or eye slots. I don't know what you want to call them, pockets. And you see the little pieces of fuzz standing out, and that's why I have not done the final sanding yet, which I will do shortly. All right, we'll see you over there. Okay, I used 400 grit sandpaper to do a finish sanding, and I'm basically going to just do the same process that I did with the 220 grit, and that is hold the sandpaper in my hand and just go to town here. So I'll do a bunch of that. There you can see this doesn't take long because the 220 grit is pretty fine. .220 grit's pretty fine, so there really isn't much to do. It's just more deburring than anything, and just getting down to that final smoothness. Okay, a little spot there. So it's worth noting that when you go to paint these, any blemishes you have on the surface of your lure, excuse me, will show up on the final product. So get it as smooth as you can, or as smooth as you care to. If you're making stuff for yourself, you know, fish aren't going to look that closely at it, but the smoother you get it, the more realistic it looks. All right, we're back at the vise. I have a piece of stainless steel wire. I don't remember what size it is now, but I got it at a local hardware store. I have it chucked into my drill, like so. And in the vise I have, it's just a tool I found laying around on the floor, but it actually is just about the perfect diameter to make these loops, these eyes. You loop it over there and you put a little tension on the drill. And I like to run it in reverse so it makes a right-hand thread, so that when I'm putting it into the lure, which you'll see in a minute, it'll tighten down in a conventional manner. So here we go. Drill is on low, and we're just going to run the drill backwards here. Yep, there's one done, and I'll get the other two done. Now that I got those hook eyes, made, I can cut them to length. And this is just kind of eyeballing. We saw how long our drill bit was. Usually I go about there, 3/4 of an inch, about that. The drill bit's about an inch long, and I don't always go to the entire depth, but you just hang on to that and then squeeze. This stuff is hard to cut because it is stainless steel. And if it's not the right length, you can always cut more off. There we go. But these will get super glued in. And then when I finish the lure, I'll put epoxy all over everything. So they'll also get epoxied in right at the last second. It's a very strong way to hook up your lure. So here we go. I got some super glue. Okay. I like to start with the back one first. See if I can get this in the shot. Get a little dab of super glue, and you let it wick in on this end grain. Right. Grab one of our wires. See if I can get this. You guys can see it'll just go in the hole, and then turn. And as I get close, I'll grab a pliers. You can hear that super glue started to set up. Yeah, and then that looks looks pretty good. And I just finished her off with just a little bit more super glue. Come on. Come on. There we go. I'll dab on both sides. And there's one hook eye in. I'm going to drill some holes for lead for a little bit of weight here. And I've got a 1/4 inch Forstner, and I think what I'm going to do is weight this just a little bit further forward because I'd like the lure to sort of be a little more nose heavy. Usually I make them a little more tail heavy or neutral. I think this one I'm going to try to go a little nose heavy. I'm not sure. We'll see how it works out. But I drill 2 holes, and I'm just spitballing at this point how much I want, how much weight I want. It looks pretty good. It's not an enormous bait, but wood does have quite a bit of buoyancy, and it does really like to float. So basswood does. So I'm gonna just go right next to that one. I don't want to go too crazy here. Apologize if that's really loud with me blowing the sawdust away. Things will probably get better. There you go. There's that weight pocket. Thinking that would be just enough. We'll see. I'd like it to probably stay on the surface until we start working the bait. There's a lot of rocks around here where we live. Very rocky, very woody bottom. So it's, if I have a sinking bait, typically they just go straight to the bottom and get snagged on something. Well, this might give it a fighting chance. We'll see. But yep, we're going to fill that with lead next. Well, some time has passed and our lure should be cool by now. I'm going to use some thin super glue and some baking soda to just fill in that void, and we can flesh things out from there. I always like to start with a little bit of super glue to just seal the area. That charred wood takes in quite a bit of super glue. There we go. We're starting to get it built up. Switch to our baking soda here. Make sure it's powdery. Clumps make for a difficult time. Just kind of being gentle with it, and then once it starts to absorb all of the super glue, put a little bit more on. Drop of that, dab of this. We don't want that just set up. Put a little bit more of the super glue on. There we go. All right, that'll be fine. Let that set up, and then we can contour that belly out. Hard as a rock. All right, we're about ready to seal this lure. I like to seal them with this thin super glue. Make sure you got all the dust off the surface. That's the best policy. And then basically it's just dribble and smooth the super glue. You get a little bit on the surface there, and see how the wood is soaking it in? That's good. That's what we want. Okay, take my hand that has a glove on it. Just kind of smooth things out. All right, we're at a point where we can paint this lure. I think we're going to go with a pretty standard sort of minnow color. And I'm going to start with just a little bit of reducer and Createx white. This is wicked colors. White. Wicked, oh no. All right, I'm going to coat the whole bait in white. And I like to use a zip tie to coat, or not to coat, to stir my paint, because it does not damage the inside of my gun, or not my gun, my airbrush. Being plastic, it doesn't really do anything to it. Looks good. This looks a little pink. I must not have cleaned my airbrush very well last time. The lure is cleaned after I smoothed it all. You want to keep your airbrush moving, so on and so forth. Okay. White's on. We'll let her dry and we'll be back with a different color. I think what we're going to do is go with a white belly and probably a silver color, fading into sort of a goldish silver color along there with a darker back. Just like I say, kind of a standard minnow color. We're going to go like probably pearlescent metal flake. Might even do kind of a darker purpley color on the back. I don't really like going super dark black. It sort of negates everything. And yeah, I guess I'll just get you set up, and then I'm going to just zip along on that. You can just watch what I'm doing. Pearl white on the belly. That might need 2 coats. Go with the pearlized silver Createx. I don't know how well that's showing up, but it's nice pearlized silver color. All right, to the next color. Do a little bit of silver. Oh, enough silver. And a little yellow. 1 drop of yellow probably. Shake them up. 1 drop of yellow. I'll start with that. See what kind of color we come up with. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. It's kind of a gold color. It's maybe a smidge yellow, maybe. We're gonna go with just half a drop of red, maybe. There we go. That's looking better. A little more towards the actual sort of gold color. I like that. Now I just sort of want this. I think we're going to just take this gold and go sort of halfway up on the body. So I'm going to hold it like so. Just get my stream going. There we go. I don't know if you can see that. Lighting's not exactly right in here for you guys to see that, but trust me, it looks nice. Nice gold color. We're going really light on this one because, like I say, our water around here is not so clean all the time, or not so friendly to darker baits. Okay. Now, grab some Createx Wicked Detail Violet. And that's going to go on right on its back here. Yeah, something a bit like that, I think. I'm just going to even out the paint here a bit. Yeah, I like that. I like that. And the last thing we'll do then for this coat is I am going to mix just a drop or two of black. Probably go with this transparent black. It's a little less aggressive looking black. Just mix it straight into what I got in the gun here. Not the gun, it's not an HPLP gun. When I have an airbrush. And we'll just do right down the center of the bait. Just fog a little bit on there. And then sort of darken things to the point where it'll make sense to the eye, just kind of a gradient. Yeah, that'll be really nice. It's really dark purple. There, it's almost black. That'll just go straight down the center of the back here. Very nice. You can kind of see how that tied it all together. Maybe. Well, my camera does not want to focus here. There we go. Kind of see it there. Okay, we're going to let that dry and we'll do some finishing here. I'll clean up my gun and we'll go from there. All right, about time to paint some gills on this lure. I got a little bit of a color mixed up here, kind of a dark brownish color. I made this stencil. It's out of Mylar plastic that I got from, I think it was Joann Fabrics or something like that. Any kind of fabric place should have them. Any kind of place that sells hobby supply should have sheets of this plastic. I'm just kind of roughly guesstimate where I want my gills to be, and I think that's about it. And I'm just going to fog on a little bit of a shadow, just a bit of an indication of a gill. There we go. Just like that. Doesn't take much. We'll come back with white and then probably pearl white and go over top of that. I'm just going to flip it here and we'll do the other side. Make sure that dries first. And a bit darker. It's okay. Like I say, we're going to come back with white and kind of fix that. Yeah, this side's a little better. That's okay. We'll come back with a pearl white and put on the gills. A bit of a mess up there, but it's not too bad. Yeah, that side's a little better. I think we're at a point on this bait where I can start doing some assembly. Have our super glue here, one of that, maybe some regular super glue. I'm going to start with the lip and glue that into place. Hit it with a little bit of super glue and just drizzle the super glue down in. Might need to clean that up a bit. Oh, there it went. Kind of look at it. I like to look at them, make sure they're on more or less straight. Exactly straight would be best. Yeah, that looks good. And now I'm going to just take a little bit of super glue and drip it down in. And that'll just hold that lip in place until I can epoxy it. Oh, careful. There we go. That's all there is to it. Now it's got to just sit until that dries. All right, see you back. Our lip is dry now, so we can move on to putting on some eyes. These fish skull living eyes. I get the fire, that's all I have right now, so that's what I'm going to use. And I like to just dab them on with just a tiny little dab of super glue, and that holds them in place until the epoxy can coat them. These are a little tricky because they have an adhesive backing, and sometimes they stick to your fingers and all sorts of stuff, but they work. Okay, and here's the trick, is you got to be careful not to get that super glue on your skin. So what I found is, I take the eye and just sort of push it into place with something other than your finger so you don't glue yourself to the bait. Yeah, and sometimes that happens. There we go. Push from the center. There we go. One eye on. One to go. Oh no. No, you go back. There we go. There we go. And just like that, the bait starts to come alive a bit. All right. Next stop is epoxy. Time for epoxy. We're going to put an epoxy coat on this. I like a nice strong top coat, because obviously the baits are going to see action. This is Alumilite Amazing Quick Coat Epoxy. This is just what I have laying around, and it seems to be doing just fine. It's a 1-to-1 ratio on this. To make sure you get enough hardener in this, I have had issues because the hardener comes out way slower than the resin. And I had issues at first with not being able to get enough hardener. Alright, the only trick to this is I've noticed if you roll the epoxy over, you get a way better mix, scraping all the way around like so. You do that for 3, 4, 5 minutes. And that way, you see how it's, oh, here we go, more or less clear. That means there's not very many air bubbles in it. And that's important because the air bubbles really don't want to come out. This epoxy stays open for 30 minutes, which is nice. And I don't have to rush. You'll see you've pretty well got her mixed because it'll sort of lose that cloudiness and it'll get perfectly clear. This stuff is great for pouring, and it goes on the baits nicely. It spreads out really nicely. Okay, I'm going to adjust my camera and I will be right back with you. All right, I'm back. I'm sure you can hear that noise in the background. That's my lure turner. I have that turned on because this epoxy is fairly liquid, and if I'm messing around trying to plug that in and get it turned on, then it can start to drip and run and stuff. So this is just the best option I've found so far, is to have that already going. Okay, this brush I'm using, it's not really a brush, it's a silicone applicator. Works really, really well for this. Excuse me. You can push the epoxy around really nicely and get a nice even coat everywhere. And it pushes out the air bubbles that are in the epoxy, which is great. A little thick. Well, I think you get the idea. Bring you back in when, excuse me, I'll bring you back in when we're ready to put it up on the turner. All right, I went ahead and took the liberty of just finishing the bait up off screen. And so here's our finished product. It's really no fun watching somebody put on hooks and split rings. It's kind of boring. But yeah, with the epoxy coat on, came out very nice. I don't think the fish are going to care exactly about any of the flaws, this or that. And let's be honest, in nature, fish don't exactly look perfect most of the time anyways. So there we go, nice little look at it. You can see that paint job. Unfortunately, the camera does not capture the gold in the paint. But overall, I'm pleased with the finished product, and we'll have to take it out and do some fishing. Hope we can get some videos of that too. That'll be fun. All right. All right, well, that about does it for this lure. If you like what you see, come on back. I've got a few more ideas up my sleeve, some wild ideas coming up here, hopefully. And yeah, hope to see you next time. And thanks for watching. All right, bye.